Welcome back to the Unraveled podcast. My name is Alina.
And my name is Nina.
And I want to talk about adulting today.
Okay.
So, at least I'm in my 20s, I'm in my late 20s now because I just turned 26.
You're still so young.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm having a revelation here. Oh my goodness. Okay. So now I start saying I'm in my late 20s.
Can I tell you something?
What?
It just gets better as you get older.
I'm very happy to hear that. So now I'm in my late 20s and I feel like adulting is just getting more real and real as the years go on.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's so much more responsibilities and things you have to do. I mean, there's responsibilities from the beginning, but I feel like it's becoming more real.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like with having a home ownership, like having a car payment, having like credit cards. I'm like, this shit is legit.
Mm-hmm. I always joke with my siblings that like being an adult is a scam.
Shoot, I agree.
There was no disclosures. Agree. You know, as a realtor, where were the disclosures? I didn't read them. I didn't get to see them. Mm-hmm. But I think, we had talked about this before, our own different life experiences and how we were raised and how we interact with our siblings and everything like that. And I think it shows kind of how we have adjusted to, when you say adulting, I think successfully moving through life in a way that's positive and beneficial to you and the people around you.
Yeah. Because
not everyone does adulting correctly,
sure,
in my opinion. And so what do you think are some of the things you learned, from 5-10 years ago you used to do and now you do them differently just because you maybe learned a better way, or maybe you met somebody who taught you something new, just more information, and now this is a more effective way of doing something?
Finances. Mm-hmm. I feel like finances were the biggest and most difficult thing to deal with just from the beginning of living out on my own. Mm-hmm. Just because I was paid like on a normal W-2 or like 1099. However I was paid, I feel like finances were just the most difficult thing to deal with. Mm-hmm. I feel like nothing prepares you for that than being in it.
Correct.
People can tell you about it all day long and show you how to do it, but when you're in the storm and actually having to go through day to day, and it's a lot of figuring out on your own and figuring out what works with you, because everyone's finances are different.
Yeah.
So I feel like nothing truly prepares you for that. So it took a lot of trial and error, mm-hmm. living paycheck to paycheck, to truly understand that. When I, first started living out on my own, I was probably making like $400 a week. Mm-hmm. And I was in a living situation with three other roommates, and I was probably paying like $500 a month in rent. And back then that was a lot to me because I was only making $400 a week. So that's like a little over one whole paycheck. And back then, living paycheck to paycheck, I was literally trying to navigate how am I going to pay my rent and then still have like money for groceries, hanging out, and all this kind of stuff. And it's very difficult to juggle in the real world. Definitely. And I feel like the most comfortable thing to do is live paycheck to paycheck, because that way you can still enjoy your life and then just hope you can pay rent at the beginning of the month. Mm-hmm. And that was just one of those really difficult things to figure out. And I didn't really start figuring that out until I was maybe 23. Just because I, number one, didn't have a lot of responsibilities other than my rent and my car payment. So I was like, I'll just, do whatever I want to do. As long as I've got my main things paid for, I'm good to go. Mm-hmm. And then obviously when you get older, you have more responsibilities that you don't have the option to just not pay.
Yeah.
Or they'll come repo your car. They'll come take your house away. Like there's a lot of large consequences.
Yeah.
Even simple things like credit card. My sister had to teach me a lot about that because I didn't understand credit. Mm-hmm. I knew nothing. And very early, I did get credit cards, but I didn't understand the concept and the value of making sure you made your payment on time or not having a high balance. Mm-hmm. And at the decisions I made at the age of 19 and 20 with credit cards still affect me to this day, because when I purchased my house, having a few missed payments from, 5 years ago affected how much I had to put down on my house because those missed payments existed.
Yeah.
So I would just say like the most difficult thing I struggled with was finances. And probably still to this day, I probably have some areas where I still struggle with it. I'm a lot better than I used to be. Now I have like a whole system for my finances. I bought this sheet on Etsy where you can kind of put in, it's an Excel sheet. You kind of put in how much money you're making that month. And it works really good for me as a real estate agent because I can put in like the closings that I'm having, how much money I have come in, and then I put in all my expenses and it literally calculates everything for me, how much needs to go in savings, how much I need to have for my business expenses, how much I need to have for my personal expenses, how much play money I have. Like it literally does all the math for me. And I swear that spreadsheet has changed my life. Yeah. Literally changed my life.
Yeah. Finance is one of those things that I think, my parents always taught me you need to save, but they never taught me about credit card, nothing. It was just like, you need to save. And so I think the thing that I learned that was most beneficial through my life is that it's better sometimes to sacrifice the short-term pleasures for the long-term gain. And
elaborate on that.
So as an example, I might have wanted to go do something or buy something, but realizing that if I'm able to just right now not have that experience or that pleasure because I know down the road this money's recurring interest or it's something that I can put towards the down payment on my first home. In the moment, I might be sad or disappointed that I didn't get to do that thing or purchase that thing. But now I think it has put me ahead of some people my age just because I made the choices that I don't mind to suffer right now because in the future, I know this is going to be a benefit. And, you're the kind of the same way where...
I'm actually the complete opposite.
Well, no, you're the same way when it comes to, like, we didn't necessarily have a whole lot growing up, right?
Right.
And so when it comes to starting our career, it was really just,
figure shit out as you go.
Yeah. And I didn't have a lot at all when I moved to the U.S. And just looking back now, it was those choices that kind of pushed me. But you don't have to do it that way. That's just what I learned and how I chose to do it. And I've seen benefits from the choices I made.
And I'm sure you have, and that's actually the way that's actually how the mindset should be. I'm the complete opposite because I'm like, I'm not going to miss this moment. Heck yeah, I'm going to go to Florida with you. And I'm like, okay, I'll spin out and I'll deal with the consequences later.
But that's why you're much more chill than me. I'm a bit more uptight, you see. But it's all about balance.
It is. And don't get me wrong, there's sometimes I'm like, yes, no, I'm not going to do that. But 90% of the time I'm like, I'm not going to miss this opportunity. Heck yeah, I'll go to Charleston for the weekend. You want to go tomorrow? Let's go.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm like, I wouldn't say like I'm living by the moment, but I'm living to enjoy my life for the fullest extent, but also within reason.
Yeah.
But I'm more focused on living my life.
And the truth is that life is short. We're young still and we think, well, we have our whole lives ahead of us, but that's not necessarily guaranteed.
Correct.
So there is a huge amount of value in enjoying your life and living in the moment. And, we've talked about this on previous episodes that the only way you can do that is through some sort of planning. So people might see you go on a trip, not realizing that, you have the spreadsheet where you're calculating everything and, the planning and thought.
To make sure I can afford, that
goes into something like that. It's definitely important. I was thinking about another thing that has kind of been my experience in adulting that my parents never really taught me was how to read people, if they're good or not, if they're trying to take advantage of you or not. Because
that's a good
within personal life and business, I'm sure you've thought back on relationships or friendships that person never really had good intentions or they weren't a good person. But when you're younger, you don't necessarily know. And so that's something that I have learned through my life.
And to getting taken advantage of.
To be able to read people, to be able to stand up for yourself. And I don't know.
That's actually a really good one. Because if you can't read people, then you miss the signs of getting taken advantage of and people will continue to take advantage of you until you finally get it.
And then you feel like, what's wrong with me? Well, there's nothing wrong with you. There's everything wrong with them. But then it's just a process of growing up, knowing who you are, learning more about yourself, when I first moved to the U.S., I didn't even know how to pump gas. That's real embarrassing. But, you figure it out. You figure out a lot of things.
As you go.
Yeah. That's why I try to tell my siblings things and like, hey, you should do this. And they don't want to listen. I'm like, okay.
Well,
you can figure it out. Exactly.
You'll learn soon enough. And I think I feel like siblings have definitely older, younger, I feel like we all have something to contribute in throughout all of our lives. Like I've learned stuff from my older siblings. They learned things from me. I even learned stuff from my baby siblings, no matter how old they are, because we, you know, although we kind of grew up same, maybe a little different, we all contribute to each other in different ways. And and they have been a huge catalyst in my growth and my development, and vice versa. And then you have also people that maybe don't have siblings or don't have a relationship with their siblings. And honestly, to that, I would say like a lot of it's going to take figuring it on your own, or maybe having people in your life that really contribute. They aren't just there to hang out with you, but really are going to contribute to your growth and your well-being, and can truly teach you something. Yeah. And I feel like that's another really big part of adulting. I feel like that is having people in your life that are truly going to be able to, that you're truly going to be able to learn from and show you the ropes.
And that's part of the process of adulting also. Realizing that you're not always right, that you can learn from everyone. Like being in a constant state of learning and growing. I could learn from someone who's 10 years younger than me or 20 years older than me, you know, but I never used to think that way, you know, but now thinking, well, looking back on different mistakes I made or choices I made or good choices, wouldn't it be just easier to learn from people so you can skip all that?
Oh my gosh.
You know, learn from their mistakes. Can you imagine?
One other thing I really had a hard time with when I was adulting was dealing with boys, dealing with men. Just because I grew up in a very strict household. We weren't allowed to talk to guys. We weren't allowed to have guy friends. We weren't even allowed to like text guys. There was a huge ban on it.
Oh, believe me. I know.
And what that does, like, I think the parents, they're like, oh, they think they're doing a good thing. But what that does is it sets us up for failure when we do have interactions with men, because we don't know how to interact because we've never had that interaction before. So coming out of a household that was like that, it was very difficult for me to navigate having men in my presence because I wasn't used to it. It may sound like a taboo thing to say, but it's legitimate. Like if you've never experienced something before, you really don't know how to act. The only time I interacted with men was at school, and that was still very like small interactions because I just didn't know how to do. I just didn't know anything because I hadn't really experienced that level of like deep levels of communication or just interactions in general.
And when you don't have enough exposure, you don't have enough to compare it with. So you think the first person that comes along is treating you correctly because you've not seen anything different. Versus if you can see a couple different examples, you can see the differences. Correct.
But then you end up going and experiencing those examples yourself because you didn't experience them in a more controlled and contained environment, which should have been in your household when you're at a younger age.
And my family was totally the same way. You know, I've talked about this with you and then with my sisters. People were like, oh my gosh, how do you know how to do so many things? Well, it's because we weren't allowed to use the internet. We weren't allowed to talk to boys. We weren't allowed to do anything. So we just kept ourselves busy learning different skills and things. But the truth is that, you know, I can only speak to my family. If you don't necessarily have a father figure that shows you what you deserve or is a good representation of that, then you don't know that that's what you should look for.
That is so true.
And it's deep and dark, but a lot of times it's true.
That is so true.
So you have a combination of people being like, well, I was never allowed to do this. Now I'm going to try everything. And then not having an example of, you know, a loving role model. And so
I've seen on social media, I remember watching this video, and it was a girl talking about how, you know, when she was growing up, like her, you know, parents took her to all these really nice restaurants, and she just was exposed to a certain lifestyle. Not because I wouldn't say not because I don't think she was saying this because she was spoiled or whatever. She was just exposed to a certain lifestyle, which put her at a certain mindset of things that she obviously was used to and what maybe she was willing to tolerate, things that she was willing to do or not willing to do. And in her dating life, she struggled with dating other men who weren't
to that standard.
Exactly. Because that's what she was used to. That's what she grew up in. So why am I going to allow you to take me to McDonald's on my first date when I'm used to going to, you know, fogo de chow, however you say it, you know?
And I have seen it with clients too, where they have such a healthy, beautiful parent-child relationship where the father or the mother gives unconditional love, regardless of whether their kid is perfect, because no one is.
Mm-hmm.
And they're always there. They're always their go-to person. So they're showing them in real time what unconditional love looks like,
Mm-hmm.
what respect looks like. Mm-hmm. And I just hope for future generations, as they have children, they think about it in that way, because nobody's perfect.
Right.
But you have to realize how you treat your kids and how you raise your kids has a huge effect on who they become as adults.
Totally agree.
And, you know.
And who they become, but also how they navigate life to figure out who they want to become as an adult.
Definitely.
Regardless of how you treated them, whether it was good or bad.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I look back on everything and I'm grateful because it's made me who I am today, but it's still just a joke. Adulting is a scam. I want a refund.
And there's still so much to figure out, and there's still so much to understand. Even in just understanding responsibilities and truly trying to navigate life. And
also, as you get older, it changes. You know, when you're in your teens, when you're in the young 25s, later 25, later 20s, early 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, it's a whole different way of viewing the world. And on the one hand, it's exciting and beautiful, the different ways you can see things compared to how you used to. But I don't know.
And it's crazy. I look at my niece who's like 4 years old and I'm like, oh my goodness, you're going to be in my shoes one day. Can we like swap roles for a minute here?
And you'll be 20 years older than her, when you'll be in your 40s looking at her and be like, girl, don't do that. Why are you doing that? It's not going to go anywhere. But she won't listen. She's got to figure it out for herself.
She shouldn't listen now. She's definitely not going to listen to me when she's 20 and I'm 40. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps up our episode. Thank you for watching. You can find us every Wednesday. We release a new episode everywhere you listen to podcasts and also on social media. Thank you for watching.
Bye.